we tend to forget just because of how digital everything is, that back in the day, we sold just by talking to people, and that was it. And we've lost that art of how to have a conversation. And it sounds very simple and like oversimplified. And it also sounds very nebulous to just say, just go have a conversation. But it really can be that simple. It's just knowing how to communicate and how to listen.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing awesome marketing. Today, I'm joined by Megan Grant. She's the owner of Spark Content Agency and Client Acquisition Coach for agencies, freelancers, and consultants. Megan, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So, Megan, you started your journey as an agency entrepreneur. You still have an agency going. What led you to the agency life?
Well, prior to that, I've been freelancing for about 15 years, and I wanted to make more money, but I had no more time left. Like, you only get 24 hours. So I knew that I needed to first start charging a little more, but also grow and scale. So I slowly built a team, and I've just continued evolving from there. More clients, more team members, more writers, and here we are.
Nice. So you're still running your agency, but that you also started to help other agencies grow. And it seems like you help a lot of agencies and consultants with the top of the funnel, client acquisition, finding new clients. At what point did you realize that you were good at that, or that you could teach other people how to do it?
It almost happened by accident. I became pretty good at landing clients just through trial and error, because when I was freelancing, I didn't know who to turn to for help with this. So I tried cold emailing, cold calling, door to door. I tried ads, I tried lump email, I tried everything. And it was just through trial and error that I found what worked and what didn't. And I thought that it had to be just me struggling with this, but the more I spoke to people, they all have the same problem. They don't know how to land clients. Mm-hmm. So I just started having conversations going, well, I could probably help with that. And, everyone has the same questions about it. So I just built a program, and now you can just take the program and it answers all your questions.
So from what I gather of your content, you are a proponent of cold outreach, cold email. It's always such a hot topic amongst the community, I would say. Does it still work? And it sounds like your answer would be a resounding yes.
Yeah, definitely. These days I rely a lot more on LinkedIn. And so, it's still cold outreach, but you kind of plant the seed there, start the relationship, and then take it to email. But sometimes LinkedIn doesn't work. And so as a backup, I will still use cold emailing. And, is it hard? Absolutely. It's a numbers game. It's largely a numbers game. But, if you can slow down a little bit and really pay attention to quality, it can work like a charm.
So LinkedIn, do you use any tools, platforms? I know there's a ton of tools out there as far as like automating LinkedIn messaging and that kind of stuff. Are you a fan of any in particular?
It's so funny you bring that up. I am testing this out as we speak. I'm always super hesitant with automating, especially because so many tools out there, go against these platforms' terms of service, and mm-hmm. they're cracking down on bots and spammers. Do some tools exist that I know they're a lot more careful with automation? Absolutely. But, again, that's something I'm still playing around with. As of right now, I do it manually.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And can you give us any tips? Like, what's your top tip as far as breaking through the noise on LinkedIn or getting a response? Like, what tips or strategies could you share with us about that?
Personalize everything. My students and I, we have templates that we work off of, but we still treat every lead as a unique individual, because they are. So don't be in too much of a hurry, and really just talk like a human. People think that, they should be thinking outside of the box and get super creative and like clickbaity. And, in other types of sales or marketing, that approach can work. But when you're reaching out to strangers, being too creative actually backfires. So what I
Hmm.
tell people is if you wouldn't say it to a stranger in person, don't say it online.
Seems like pretty simple advice.
It is quite simple. I think we feel like it needs to be complicated, but it really doesn't a lot of the time.
So a lot of our community are new in their agency entrepreneurship and in their journey,
Mm.
and they definitely struggle with landing clients. How do you start somebody like right out of the gate? Do you take them straight into LinkedIn, or do you go look for leads that you can, buy through a different service? Something like, I think I saw you talking about hunter.io at some point, or services like that.
So what they learn is 6 ways to source leads, because they're
Mm.
always afraid that, because I always tell them pick a niche, and they're like, oh, I'm going to run out of leads. Like, you'll never run out of leads. That's not a concern. So I teach them first how to source and qualify, and they keep track of everything in a spreadsheet. And once they identify not just brands that they want to reach out to, but we go to LinkedIn and we look for the actual individuals who work in their department, who are going to understand them. And they reach out to them with an invite, they reach out with a direct message, and the relationship goes from there. So there's definitely some, work in the beginning to kind of build the foundation and set them up. Especially for people who come to me and their agency is like brand new. There's a little more grunt work in the beginning, but it's a lot of stuff that you only really have to do once, and then you're kind of off to the races.
Got it. But yeah, it sounds like you're a fan of personalization, which I am as well. I mean, how much time? There's kind of a fine line, right? And it's like you definitely don't want to be sending the same message to everybody, but you also don't want to look up and realize you just spent 45 minutes working on one outreach to one person. Or is that enough, like a good enough amount of time, or too much time?
No, I always tell people to have a set of like 3 to 5 templates that you rotate through, and then personalize the first name, the brand name, and then, if you notice any other details you want to customize. But someone actually, they just asked me this morning, they said, I have an hour to an hour and a half every day to do cold outreach. Should I be getting like 1 or 2 done, or should I be getting like 50 done? And you're right, it's a fine line, because it's still a little bit of a numbers game, but I'll always say if you've got an hour, aim for like 10 to 20.
Okay.
So you definitely don't want to get stuck on one for like 10 minutes. It's counterproductive, and it's honestly not necessary anyway.
That's interesting, because you
Mhm.
feel like you can create or come up with scalable sort of templates that work.
Yeah. And it's, I will always tell people, some people aren't going to listen and they're just going to copy paste. But that's, my approach is always have real conversations with, it's you're one human talking to another human, and they can smell it on you when you're not keeping it real, when you're trying to sell them, when you're trying to pitch them. Just start the conversation, plant the seed, and let it unfold from there. And it will. And they're going to be receptive because they're going to feel you being genuine with them.
Talk to me about that process, because it sounds like you're not trying to go for the kill, so to speak, on the first message. What kind of a process are we talking about? Is this going to be something that goes back and forth quite a few times before you actually make your pitch?
No, so it's definitely striking a balance between the two. So I always tell people, never pitch in the first message, never pitch when you add the invite to the note to, or I'm sorry, when you add the note to the invite on LinkedIn. Don't hard sell, because people don't respond to that. But we also we're not looking for pen pals here. We don't want to be messaging back and forth. They don't want to do that either. So I always say, approach being clear with your intentions. Just tell them, I'm reaching out because I'm interested in blah, blah, blah. And then I always tell people to ask for permission. And what I mean by that is say, would you be open to discussing this with me more? Because then you're giving your leads a chance to say, oh, sure, that's totally fine, as opposed to trying to push them. So I know some salespeople would say, be more aggressive and go right in and going for the kill, but that just never worked for me.
Mm. And Megan, of all the folks that you've helped, what would you say is one or two of the most common mistakes that you see young agencies making when it comes to filling the funnel?
So the first thing is trying to do everything all at once. And the kind of the paralysis by analysis, they have funnels and they have Facebook ads and they have this, and all of which is valid and can be great. But especially if you're a new agency owner, you might not have the bandwidth personally, you might not have a huge team yet, which is all okay. And it's great to test, but you gotta like one thing at a time here. Otherwise, nothing happens.
Hmm.
So they try to make it super, super complicated and it blows up in their face. So I would say that's one of the bigger ones. And then also we tend to forget just because of how digital everything is, that back in the day, we sold just by talking to people and that was it. And we've lost that art of how to have a conversation. And it sounds very simple and like oversimplified. And it also sounds very nebulous to just say, just go have a conversation. But it really can be that simple. It's just knowing how to communicate and how to listen.
That's a good point. I mean, when I think about the emails that I get every day, I would say the large majority of them are very cold and clearly, trying to accomplish a specific goal from the other person's perspective.
Mhm.
Whereas sometimes you get one and you just feel like it's, I don't know, somebody that you would or could be friends with writing you. And even if you're completely uninterested, at least I always take the time to sort of reply genuinely
Mhm.
instead of just blowing it off. And I think just replying, I'm kind of subconsciously saying like, okay, yeah, I'm giving you one more shot. But um, that engagement would never happen if it weren't written in a way that felt like an actual person that I wouldn't mind talking to in real life. And
That's
that's kind of hard to teach, I would think.
It is because some people, it even comes down to your tone. Because like some
Totally.
people know all the words, but they might be kind of like awkward or robotic. So that's why part of my program, we always do practice sales calls or discovery calls, whatever you want to call them. And I will get on the phone on a Zoom call with my students and I will pretend to be a lead and we have a fake discovery call. And we will do it over and over and over again until it starts to feel natural to them.
Mm.
Because you're right, you can tell on Zoom, you can tell in an email, and like even when you and your team reached out, it wasn't just hi, do you want to be on our podcast? Like it felt like a letter from a buddy.
Yeah. There's a difference, right? I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of times I get on calls and it's like, hey, cool. So where do you live? Okay, cool. How long have you been there? Okay, cool. How's the weather? Okay, cool. And it's just like clearly this like checklist that's being gone through versus somebody that asks one question, listens, and then the conversation like builds from there. So that's interesting. It's got to be a challenge for you to teach folks those soft skills. But once you can do it, I feel like it immediately melts barriers.
It really does. And what I've found, because I've turned to other, especially a lot of like sales experts, because in the very
Mhm.
beginning, I was super nervous on the phone. Like I call myself an extroverted introvert. I would get on the phone and I'd be shaking. And, I tried all of the scripts and the templates, and I would sit there and I would have my script up on my screen and I would go right down it. And it felt so fake. And I
Mhm.
found that the sweet spot was having a list of questions and some like talking points written out ahead of time. But what I always tell people, especially if you're nervous, having a conversation, start the conversation by asking them your questions and let them do all the talking.
Mm.
And that gives you a chance to kind of get comfortable, but also you need that information because that's going to help you understand, can I even help these people?
That's so funny because I got targeted by an ad on YouTube the other week, and it was for those master classes that they do,
Uh-huh.
and it was a guy who was a professional negotiator. like, oh, someone's on a ledge, like call in is that what they call them? Negotiator? Or I
Yeah.
don't know. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting master class. Like, why does this guy get a master class? And he was just like, every conversation you have is a negotiation.
Mhm.
And one of his points that I found fascinating in the trailer was the one that you just made, which is people love to talk, so let them. Basically, tee it up and let them go as long as they want, because the more they talk, the more they will reveal about themselves, about whatever the business is that you're trying to do with them, what their needs are. And if you just kind of sit back and listen, it becomes very easy to be like, oh, okay, so I heard you say this and I heard you say that. We fix those two things by doing this. Does that sound of interest to you? So yeah, I think listening is kind of an overlooked strategy.
It really is. And what I think a lot of us forget is that they actually give you everything you need to kind of close the deal. So, the questions that I tell my students to ask, it's to better understand what they're struggling with and what their problems are. And
Mhm.
so by the time the conversation gets to the agency owner or whoever saying, okay, so what I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z, here's how I think we can help, you already kind of positioned them, you kind of made them tell you that they're struggling and they need help. So you don't have to convince them.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like, structuring the conversation so that they start the whole conversation off with, we need help. And then, because a lot of people equate selling with convincing. If you ask them
Mhm.
the right questions, you don't have to convince them. They'll acknowledge it themselves.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And that was something that guy said in his masterclass promo or whatever. And it was like, um, oftentimes if you sort of make a suggestion, so it's like, oh, so it sounds like you would say this or whatever, people love to correct other people. And
Mhm.
then they'll tell you the true story about what's going on with them. So it's like, oh, it sounds like you guys are doing great and you really don't need more business. It's like, oh, well, no, I didn't say that. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. So now like we're having a conversation and now we all know that you do need help. So there's all these subtle, like soft skills that I found fascinating. It sounds like that's some of the stuff that you go over.
Yeah, you're right. It is hard to kind of teach because I feel like a lot of it just comes with repetition and with
Mhm.
experience. And that's why I tell them, like, the more you do this, the more you're going to see what works and it's going to start to click. And you're going to learn how to have real conversations. And you don't have to trick them. You don't have to, use any weird mind or psychology hacks. Like, there are little things you can do to make the conversation work in your favor, but like, they already need help. You know it, they know it. That's why they're on this call. So
Mhm.
you don't have to work quite as hard as you think you do, I feel like.
Mm, good point. So in your program, I mean, we've spent the whole time talking about prospecting. Do you help agencies and coaches with other parts of the funnel, or do you specifically focus on helping people get new leads and prospects into the pipeline?
Landing clients is definitely the meat and potatoes because that's, what everyone comes to me, that's what they're struggling with. They can't do much else if they're not making enough money. But there's definitely other aspects of it. And a lot of this comes from the one-on-one coaching that I provide, which is included. So things like how to interview and hire people, different tools and
Mm.
software they could use that could help them scale, and really like taking that next step to start removing themselves from the agency and slowly pass that work off to their team. Because that's a whole new hurdle and there's a huge learning curve. But fortunately, I already made all those mistakes, so they don't have to.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you have to, if you're going to get past like the 5K, 10K a month barrier, you do have to grow your team. And I still struggle with interviewing and hiring.
Mhm.
It's something that a lot of times I feel like we as agency founders or operators focus so much on the work. You don't think about the stuff like hiring that you're going to have to do. And then when you go to do it, it's like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. I didn't, like, and then, the worst is when you actually hire somebody because you just want to get it over with and you find out you hired the wrong person. So, I could definitely see how it would help to have some coaching there.
Yeah, it's tricky because it's for most people it's very new territory, and what I did and what I, actually just talked to someone yesterday who's going to join my program. And she was saying, she was like, I don't have much more time to make this leap. I have to do it now or I'm going to be in trouble, because she has so much work. And that's exactly what I did. I waited until I had no other choice and I had to hire. And then I was hiring out of fear and panic. And,
Right.
I felt desperate. And that's when you start to hire the wrong people. So I always tell people, hire a little before you need to, a little before you hit that breaking point, because it might take you a few tries to find the right person, to train them. But then the good news is, once you find good people, it makes your life so much easier.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, once you make a good hire, it's like, why didn't I do this 6 months ago, 12 months ago,
Yeah.
etc. But yeah, it is something I could definitely see. I don't know if you do, like you said, you do role playing and stuff for prospecting, if you also do that with hiring, but I could see
Mhm.
that being such a valuable service to help people go through, because once you hop into it, you realize how foreign of a process it is if you've never done it.
Yeah, that's absolutely, it's such a good point. And because one thing I learned, when you're hiring people, and I don't think this is, limited. I think this could happen in a multitude of scenarios, but like, when people want a job, of course, they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear.
Yeah.
And they might give you this Cinderella story and then you hire them and they end up being a nightmare. That's happened to me many times. So I've learned over the years, what kind of test assignments to give them, what questions to ask, how to see, can they think on their feet? Because, I'm hiring mostly writers. So asking them for a sample of their work is a good place to start, but I can't prove that they even wrote it. I don't know
Mhm.
who might have been editing it after the fact. So I want to see what their like raw content, their original writing looks like. And a lot of the time you see something completely different. And it's
Wow,
very
that's
telling.
interesting. Yeah, how
Mhm.
would you even go about getting that? Do you like sit there and watch them type in a Google Doc or something?
Well, no, I give them, I mean, I still couldn't prove that they wrote it, but I give them a test assignment, like a 300 to 500 word blog, and I give, a
Mhm.
slightly tighter deadline, and I tell them like, you'll have more time if we move forward, but it's a short window on purpose. And they send it straight to me. And this is the tricky part when it comes for me to hire. 9 times out of 10, the writing that I get looks completely different from the sample they originally showed me. So
Mhm.
I usually have to interview a lot of people to find
Yeah,
one that I know can keep up.
it's a great point. I found that as being the person interviewing, that often, like you said, you get those responses that are what they think that you want to hear. And it's like you're actually looking for somebody that's like, oh no, that's not me, or that is me, but not in the middle, right? It's so hard to hire people when you're not getting like a real sense of which way they would go at a decision, you know?
Yeah, it's hard. And, even once you kind of like figure it out, people are still going to surprise you. Like,
Mhm.
every time I hire someone, I think I've got this handled. Like, there's nothing anyone could do at this point to catch me off guard. And they still do, because we're human beings. We're very
Sure.
complex. But that some people are gonna show up exactly as they present themselves. They're gonna be great. I've got 2 women on my team, they're sisters actually, and they're phenomenal. They're so good, and they're real and honest and genuine, and what you see is what you get. So those people are out there. You might have to kiss a few frogs, but they're out there for sure.
Nice. Megan, if people are watching and they're interested in the program, where do they go to check it out?
The easiest way is to go to my website, which is megangrant.net, and I have a page there for my program, which is called Revenue Spark, and they can view the curriculum, some testimonials, and if they would like to speak further, they can book a call with me, and they can do that right from that page.
Awesome. So that's megangrant.net.
Mhm.
Megan, thank you so much to come on to chat with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.